Welcome to Queer View Mirror, a show about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and our allies. I am Dawn.
And I'm Scott.
And today our guest is Aws Jubair from Istanbul, Turkey.
Aws is an ally and activist for LGBTQ plus individuals and refugees from the Middle East. He is one of those heroes you rarely get to meet. After witnessing some of the worst atrocities imaginable, Aws left Iraq with his family when he was 12 during the Iraq War in 2003.
As a refugee himself, Aws has dedicated the last 5 years to supporting queer people and other refugees living in Istanbul. He founded the Aman Project in 2017, and the organization has since provided shelter, emergency funding, training, and a sense of community to the area's most vulnerable people.
It was chilling to hear how dangerous it is for these refugees, where same-sex relationships are extremely taboo, and many queer people live in fear for their lives.
These are such important issues for our time. Knowing that our queer brothers and sisters in other parts of the world are suffering, and people like Aws Jubair are trying to make a difference. These are the heroes we need, Scott. Let's dive into our episode. I'm so excited. This is Queer View Mirror coming at ya.
Step up, climb in. We've been waiting for you. Come on, let's go. Wheels begin turning. My, we've come so far. Just think where we can go. Hey, now I'm glad you're here. I want to hear your point of view. I just might learn.
Today, we are talking to Aws Jubair about the critical work he is doing to support queer refugees in the Middle East. I have to say, Scott, I came out of that interview feeling so fortunate to be living in Canada.
I felt the same way, Dawn. We may have our problems, but we can easily forget how far we've come in our goals for greater acceptance of queer communities in Canada. It's hard to imagine the kind of fear you experience coming from a country torn by war and having to hide your sexuality or be cast out by family members. Aws highlighted how real queer people suffer from extreme religious intolerance and human rights violations.
It is very saddening indeed. Aws believes that queer citizens are just as vulnerable as some refugees fleeing the war in Syria. And his advocacy, he supports them while they wait for refugee claims to be finalized in other countries. Aws also has a strong social media presence, and he uses it to promote his organization, and because of this, he has received both applause and a harsh response from some members of the Arab community.
He even mentioned that he received criticism from his uncle for carrying the rainbow flag on his organization's Facebook page. Aws is a strong ally who is so committed to humanitarian issues that he doesn't see any difference between racial discrimination and homophobia. It must be a challenging role to play as an activist, but Aws has remarkable courage. Let's go to the interview, Don.
Yeah, my name is Aws Jubair. Yeah, I'm from Baghdad, Iraq. Yeah, I'm an activist, and I work mostly on LGBTQ. Uh, I work mostly with the LGBTQ refugee community, but also I work with the refugee community in general. And I've been in this field for the last 5 years.
I see.
So you're
Yeah.
from Iraq and you're currently living in Istanbul in Turkey, right?
Yes, I'm a refugee. I grew up in Iraq. I was born in 1991, and I was 12 when the war started. When it was, it was 2003, and I I grew up in that time, and then I witnessed all sort of whatever you see in war
Mm-hmm.
movies and worse. Some things that are too graphic to even see in a movie. I've seen in my eyes when I was growing up. I witnessed some difficult things, and we had a lot of trouble. We ended up going to Turkey to apply for uh, asylum. We actually applied to go to the US in 2011. We came to Turkey, we applied, and then we waited for 3.5 years. We spent all of our life savings, me and my family, and then we ended up we were rejected. So I so I've been a refugee in Turkey for 10 years, and I was thinking like, how did I become like an ally? Uh, and then I remembered I was actually never homophobic. Like I've never, even though I grew up in a society that is homophobic, uh, unfortunately, uh, people do not have an understanding. Even educated people, even smart people, uh, have homophobic uh, attitudes because that's the upbringing in the society. I was lucky because my parents were educated, and they gave me this the one of the biggest things they gave me is the ability to uh, critically think about things and not just take them from society as they are. So I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a family that are like more secular um, family where my dad is an atheist. He used to drink, which is something that's seen as taboo and is very frowned upon in Baghdad. Uh, so my father was an atheist. My mom is she doesn't wear the scarf. She's a Muslim, but she's a very like open-minded, tolerant person. And they thought, and my mom, I remember she used to like criticize the society about many things, about how they see the sexism, and how they bring up girls in a different way than guys, and how uh, like the society is close-minded about some issues. And I remember her like telling me about these things, and so we didn't like go deep into anything, but what I took from that is, let me think myself. And the more I grew up, I mean, I used to go to a mosque like every day. So I used to also when I was a child. But then when I was a bit older, I started to read more and watch more, and there were many things in my society that I did not like. I didn't like how people perceived or treated women. Uh, I didn't like how people treated how they see things like religion. How religion is a big, uh, huge factor in daily life, and I didn't like uh, how sex was something like, sex before marriage. I remember was when I was growing up, I was like, shouldn't be something that is wrong in my society. Is something very wrong. Like if a woman had sex before marriage, that's basically she's without honor, and
Mm-hmm.
she does so um, and one of the things that the more I grew up, the more I believed in is the rights of the LGBTQ community. Even though I've never met someone from the LGBT community in Iraq, I mean, let's say openly from the LGBT community, I might have friends actually who have been in who belong in that community that were just not open.
So
And
I understand correctly. In
yeah,
Iran or Iraq, it's illegal to be LGBTQ, right?
well, in Iran it's illegal. In Iraq, it's not illegal. I think it's just you will
Frowned
have a
upon.
problem. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
you will, but
What
it's
about
it's
in Istanbul? Is it what's the climate there in Istanbul
no,
for
it's
the
not
L?
illegal. In Turkey, it's not illegal, but it's still uh, very frowned upon unless you are in Istanbul in Turkey and Istanbul. It's relatively better than the Arab world. So
Mm-hmm.
people, some in some circles, like the open-minded secular, because in Turkey it's a more secular country. So there are some circles who are open to LGBTQ rights and LGBTQ people. In Iraq, it's very, very difficult to find that. Even in the educated circles, even in the open-minded circles, in Iraq or in other countries in the Arab world, uh, it's hard to find that. So um, in some countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, people can get the death sentence for being gay. Or
Okay.
people in other Arabic countries, people can go to prison. People have to pay a penalty, money. So yeah, it's a very difficult issue. So
Mm-hmm.
sparking up a conversation is what I want to do. And I'm thankful for you to host me on this show to talk more about it. But yeah, we want to talk more and more. And right now, I'm actually working on. So I'm the founder and director of the Aman Project. And for your viewers, you can go and check it out. The Aman Project basically advocates for LGBTQ issues in the Middle East and advocates for LGBTQ refugees.
How long ago
And
did you start this?
so actually, the Aman Project was a shelter, started as a shelter in 2017, and I was the manager of the shelter um, until 2000. We used to provide free housing, food, language classes, uh, medicine and other emergency support and workshops and to LGBTQ refugees.
Wow.
We hosted like 20 people at the same time. Like we had like a 5-story building, 5 apartments,
Wow.
and we would give them like a free place to stay for a few months. And the purpose was to support them and help them to uh, learn the language, have some peace of mind, so that they can go out, look for jobs, and then hopefully be independent after
Mm-hmm.
that. So people would rotate, and overall, we've hosted more than 100 people in the shelter, and some people stayed for 3 months, some people stayed even for a year, depending on each case. But in 2019, we had to shut down. We had to close down, uh, partly because of the situation in Turkey. It's not really the political situation is not hospitable to something like this, and we had police visits 3 times, and we were very nervous. So I resigned from working at the shelter in 2019, and a month later, they shut it down. And after that, in the same year, I founded the Aman Project, which is basically trying to continue this work, but in a different way, not having a shelter, a physical shelter, but helping LGBTQ refugees with emergency assistance, whether it's for rent, whether it's for food, medicine, or emergency transportation for like job interviews or UNHCR registration or whatever it is. So that's what I'm doing right now. Uh, it's one of the main things I'm doing is trying to raise money, try to raise awareness, and we are trying to use our social media presence to talk about LGBTQ issues in English, Arabic, and Turkish to try to raise awareness,
Wow.
especially with the discrimination that refugees suffer from, whether they are LGBTQ or not. There's also a lot of racism towards refugees and discrimination. And at the same time, there's a lot of problems uh, that gets in your way if you're an LGBTQ person. Uh, Job discrimination, housing discrimination. People can get kicked out at any time
Yeah.
if they were found to be gay, or get also, of course, getting evicted from their own homes, like with their families. Their families oftentimes are the first ones to kick them
Mm-hmm.
out or threaten them sometimes, unfortunately. So sometimes they need help, like on a on not a regular time, because we try not to like create a sense of dependency,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, it's just not realistic to help everyone every month. But oftentimes they need more help, and especially now with the pandemic and the how it's hitting the economy of the whole world and the whole country. In Turkey, refugees and LGBTQ refugees are often like they're the ones who are mostly impacted by this, because they're the ones who are get discrimination the most. So that's why our project is so much needed right now. But unfortunately, we rely on small donations, and with the pandemic means that less people also are working and less people are feeling financial security. So our donations have been decreasing and decreasing in time, uh, and at the same time the needs are getting
Mm-hmm.
more and more and more.
Just to address your previous point, like with the Rainbow Railroad, a lot what they do focus on is getting people to Canada. And that's because in Canada, we have a lot of social agencies and a very
Yes,
socially responsible government. So even though they may not provide financial support, once they get here, there's several venues they can go to get housing, to get food, to get medicine, to find a place to live, to get a shelter. So, we're very fortunate that way in Canada, that really it's just a matter of getting onto the soil. Um, you know,
absolutely. And
like,
we have people from our community who went to Canada, uh, and also we have people who went to Europe. Like almost 50% of the people I worked with are now in Europe or North America. So all of them are registering as refugees, and especially Syrian refugees have a lot of advantage because they are from Syria. Even though I don't think it makes a lot of sense, because people from LGBTQ refugees from Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, especially, are just as persecuted as because the political situation there is also very unstable. But Syrian refugees have a higher chance to get resettled, and a lot of the people from our community have resettled to Europe, but they wait like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So while they wait, this is where we come in and try to
I
basically
see.
support them to not be homeless or go hungry. So hopefully, all the people that we're working now with, hopefully one day they will go to a third safe country. But what happens between now and then is what we're doing. We're trying to tackle.
Wow, that's wonderful.
how many employees does your agency have?
Well, we don't have any employees, even me, like I'm
Everybody's
volunteering.
volunteers.
Yes, I mean, when the shelter was on, uh, we were so the organization that founded the Aman, and I was like working for this organization, is called Safe Place International. You can look them up. They are US based NGO. Their founder is a friend of mine, Justin Hilton. He's a gay man himself, and he is very generous. He funded this organization in the beginning from his pocket. He we together we started the Aman project, Aman Shelter. So at that time, I used to get paid. I was an employee, but most of the people that I worked with, I relied on volunteers, because most of the money that was dedicated for this project was going to our community, not to hire more people.
Mm-hmm.
So after the shelter closed in 2019, and I founded the Aman Project, it was just like unofficial. Basically, it's a grassroots project, and so I didn't get paid from it, uh, except for the movie, for this documentary project. I had like a fundraiser, and so people know my work and know what I'm doing, so they supported me, and they also like donated for the fundraiser, and this is how I managed to support myself in the last few months. But yeah, we're not like it's not we don't have any employees, and right now we're not getting paid, but hopefully we're applying. We're hoping to apply. We're working to apply for grants because we want to get funded and we want to uh, do this on a more like on a professional level. And hopefully, when I get to Canada, I will also register the Aman Project as a um, uh, non-registered non-government organization,
Mm-hmm.
so we can get more support and we can uh, do even more for the LGBTQ advocacy in the Middle East, but also supporting LGBTQ people in the Middle East and North Africa who oftentimes they are living in a very harsh situation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we get messages on our page, for example, or personally me, I get messages from people in different countries in the Middle East asking us for help because they need to get out because they are getting threats or abuse from people in their community.
Well, listening to your story now makes me appreciate even more, our situation here in Canada. I'm curious about something like where did the name Aman Project come from? Is there any story to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Aman in Arabic means safety. So
Oh, I see.
the idea of the shelter was that we want to create a safe place for them, and that's the name of the organization, Safe Place International. So we
Oh,
want to
I
create a
see.
safe environment where people could live and be themselves, and that was actually the most, I would say, because I went into this project and I went into this work thinking that, oh, that's amazing. We're going to provide housing and food and language classes, and that's great. That for me, in my thinking, that was the most important thing we're doing. But actually, after doing this work, I found out that the most valuable thing that people were getting from this is just a safe place to be themselves and and live with people who are like them and understand them, and they can be themselves around them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a community and family feeling to it, and it's something that I'm most proud of. And we still have like a WhatsApp group where we're together, and it's called the Aman family. So we try to create a family feeling because a lot of most of the people in our community, they were kicked out of their own families. Their families do
Mm-hmm.
not talk to them anymore, and so
Oh,
they need that sense of belonging to something, a community. It's very essential.
wow. Well, I'm curious about another thing is the movie. So what stage is the movie in now? Is it done? Is it still in production?
Um, so when I say movie, I'm not talking about like a high production type
Yeah,
of
I mean,
movie.
it's a documentary, right?
It's a yeah, it's a so I'm lucky to know some videographers, like professional videographers who are working with me to help me like film interviews. And so far, we've done 6 interviews with people from the Middle East or North Africa. We talked to yes, I think so. Yeah, it was like basically a gay man from Iraq, a gay man from Palestine, Syria. Oh, and a gay man from Palestine.
Like Scott said, what an ally. Right? Like we're so glad to have you as an ally.
It's my honor. It's my honor to be an ally.
Wonderful. Well, stay in touch, and we definitely want to hear the progress you're making, and we'll get you out as much as we can over on this side of the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Well, Scott, that was another amazing interview with another dedicated activist for queer rights in a part of the world which needs more allies like Aws Jubair. His efforts to the Aman Project are literally saving lives. I'm also excited by the documentary he's working on, interviewing queer refugees and helping them tell their stories to an international community and especially the Arab world. Aws really believes in the importance of conversation in helping change people's attitudes.
We know how important it is for queer stories to get out there. People's beliefs can change once we start having the conversation. Aws said that he was influenced by his family to be a critical thinker, and he was able to question the laws and religious beliefs that repress women and queer people. He made it his mission to stand up for the most vulnerable people in his community. He says it the best: hate is hard when you meet someone up close.
I love that, Scott. It's part of our mission here on Queer View Mirror to tell our stories and to get to know the real people behind each story. It's sad that religious intolerance still exists, but we can all make a difference by learning about other queer experiences and remembering how fortunate we are to be living in a country that protects our human rights. Aws is a special kind of humanitarian. I am hopeful he will be joined by other like-minded people in a new generation of Arab communities, having open conversations and challenging inequalities.
It's encouraging, Dawn, to see what's possible and have hope for other cultures and queer people who are struggling just to survive. We can support Aws and other communities just by listening and reaching out with a few words on social media, so we'll be sure to keep following Aws and his amazing work.
Well, everyone, we received some true inspiration today from Aws Jubair and his efforts to help the LGBTQ refugees to get a new lease on life. Funding for refugees is so crucial, especially now after the impact of COVID-19. The Aman Project provides emergency assistance and education and creates a safe haven for queer refugees who can finally find community with other queer people.
This is a great conversation, Dawn, because racism remains a problem in Canada, and Aws speaks to us as an Arab, as a refugee, and as one of our strongest advocates in fighting all forms of oppression. I think very few Canadians can imagine making this kind of impact.
I agree, Scott. Aws also said something very profound. In his mind, there is no difference between racism, homophobia, or religious hatred. He sees the human face behind the vulnerable people and reminds us these are all issues about human rights. Against the tide of religious hate, he is creating a conversation and a positive change in the Arab community. And I am so inspired by his determination.
Aws also believes in fighting all forms of discrimination, and I believe that too, Dawn. As queer people, we need our allies, and we need to stand with anyone seeking human rights in different cultures or countries. I know this is one way we can help make the world a better place.
Absolutely, Scott. I couldn't agree more. And we will do our best. We will do our part to make a difference every day right here on Queer View Mirror.
Well, everyone, we will keep bringing you stories from our everyday queer heroes and allies. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Queer View Mirror.